Hi everyone, Brian back again. Today I'm going to attempt a portrait of another one of my favorite artists, Andrew Wyeth. He did a lot of work in watercolor. He also used other mediums like egg tempera and some other things. But I thought I'd show you a couple of his watercolors in here, and then I'll start in on the portrait. He had such a great sense of using light lights and dark darks in his paintings. I mean, look at the value of some of these background bushes. There's so much drama in his work. I mean, there's not even much going on in this painting subject-wise. It's like a curled up newspaper in an environment, and there's so much drama going on. Anyway, there's another one. And he's also kind of known for using kind of a very limited earth tone type palette. Here's another watercolor. I just love, all the stuff that's going on in the painting. All the stuff that's of interest is here, and he just left this giant, this giant wall of color, and it works. He pulls it off. And I also love this one of the view and light coming in the window here. And again, it's a lot of earth tones. There's a little bit of cools in this door here, but it's just gorgeous. All that loose brushwork and just the drama of the light is just gorgeous. So anyway, here we go. Okay, so this is going to be a portrait of this guy, Andrew Wyeth, one of my favorite artists. This is a famous photo of him that I'm sure is copyrighted, and I will put the photographer's credits or credit in the information section of this video. Typically, I wouldn't be painting from someone else's photo, but in trying to paint Andrew, I have no other option. And so I just want to say this isn't something I would ever do for sale or, this is for demonstration purposes only. So I thought it'd be okay to use the photo in this case. So anyway, I'm beginning to draw. I'm getting some of the major features in there. It's looking absolutely nothing like Andrew Wyeth at this point. His head's a little too round and eyes are a little close together. I think I catch that here in a minute. Okay, like I mentioned in my previous video where I was drawing Winslow Homer, I tend to focus on, I just realized the nose was too short and erased it and put it back in. I tend to focus on the eyes and the nose and then start working. Of course, I had my basic shapes in first, but then I go in and start working on the eyes and nose a little bit, and kind of adding features in from there and looking at proportions from that point as well. Oh yeah, it looks like I'm trying to fix the eye distance a little bit there. By this point in the when the photo was taken of Andrew. He was an older man with lots of wrinkles and things on his face. It's always kind of fun to paint, unless you let it get away from you. And I will show you that at the end of the painting. This painting begins to get away from me towards the end of the video here, and I'm not real happy with the way the painting turned out. And so I thought for a little while I might just go ahead and scrap this whole thing. And then I thought, you know what? I may as well show my failure in this, and maybe, you know, someone can learn from it, and I certainly can learn from it. And I just thought I'd go ahead and use the video and kind of explain why things go awry. So it looks like I've got the collar and the jacket and the shoulders kind of roughed in there. That was one of the cool things about this photo. Is just that nice giant collar that he's got going on around his face. So I'm getting closer and closer here to, well, it looks like I'm done. I've got my palette out. So I guess at this point, I think I'm good enough to go. There's a lot of corrections that are going to need to be made in the paint. I can tell just looking at it here, and I know I do to some degree later. So this is my, this is an aluminum palette that's sort of like my Holbein, and this palette has my M Graham colors in it. And today I'm just using a very limited color palette. I'm just using a mixture of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And I mentioned in my palette, or my colors video, I like to do paintings sometimes with just those two colors and play with the warms and cools. And so I thought this might be a natural progression from the single color, the sepia I used in the Winslow Homer painting, and then this could move up to two colors for this one. So I roughed in the background pretty lightly. I knew I wanted to keep the background light like the photo, and then I dropped a little bit of burnt sienna in there to kind of warm it up. And now I'm going in and kind of hitting those major areas of the collar with more of a grayish mixture. Okay, now I'm going back in and looking at the photo and trying to figure out, like I typically do, like where the middle values are and where the lightest lights are going to be. And he had the shadow side of his face over there on the right side, and a lot of sunlight hitting kind of his forehead, his nose, and around his mouth. And so there was almost like a core of light. And so at this point, I'm basically putting in everything around that core of light. I wiped something away with the paper towel there. I think it got a little too wet. I have a lot of trouble with this one today with things being too wet. You'll see the hairdryer pop in quite a bit. At this point, things are still kind of looking promising. Nothing's gone too bad so far, and I'm starting to carve out his portrait a little bit and try to augment the pencils and the pencil drawing and try to figure out where paint can go to kind of correct some of my drawing mistakes. And again there, I put down a dark to define his chin, and it just started bleeding into his face. It's very wet today for some reason. We've had rain. So I think that's affecting our humidity. I live in Montana, and it's very dry here. So typically washes will dry probably a lot quicker than, or more quickly than they will in other areas of the country that might be more humid. But today I'm having trouble because they aren't drying as quickly as I'm used to them drying. In Montana, it's like even water isn't wet. It's so dry around here. Okay, so I'm going back in and putting in his chin line. And one thing I noticed looking at this is that I've made his jawline probably a little too broad, a little too wide. He has a pretty narrow face. So I think I go in and correct that a little bit later. At this point, I'm still using just those two colors. I'm using the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue. And at this point, I'm going in and defining some of those um, bigger shapes in his coat and his collar, and just trying to block those in. No detail at this point with the coat. Drop a little more of the burnt sienna into the mixture there, so it has a little color shift going on in there, so it's not just all one big chunk of that blue grayish color. Now I'm going in and defining that shadow core a little more on that right side of his face, starting with the eye socket there. And at this point, looking at it, it's like, this could work out. This could be okay. Little blob there. Wiped it off and then started splattering. It's like, well, if I'm going to have a mess here, I may as well make it messier. A little on his cheek I had to wipe off with a paper towel. Just hitting a little detail on his forehead and his hair there. I don't want to get too nuts. I want it to recede in the viewer's eye. One thing to remember when painting, especially from a photograph, is that the human eye doesn't see things the way a photograph sees things, especially when you have a tighter aperture on the camera and everything's in focus. Our eyes don't see that way. We don't see everything in focus all at once like a photo does. If you happen to if you look at something in the room with you, and really look at what you're seeing, the only thing in focus is the object or the little area that you're actually looking at. Everything else is out of focus. The human eye doesn't see like a photo where you can take in a scene and everything is nice and sharp. It's basically the center and what you're looking at that's focused. And so with painting, with some degree of success, some failures sometimes, I try to remember that and remember that not everything has to be overly detailed and sharp. You can kind of lead the viewer's eye by using more detail and focus in certain areas and letting other areas kind of disappear. Not disappear, kind of blur out. Kind of like details in his hair and his ears and things. I don't go too nuts with those. Okay, I'm trying to pull the shadow into his nose a little bit there because there's a hot, kind of a hot light on the left side. Going in and pulling a little more value into his forehead to differentiate, there's the word, between his skin tone and his white hair. Okay, at this point I'm using a very saturated mix of the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue to get my darkest dark, and I'm starting to define some of the shadow areas on the coat collar. Little quick detail in the ear there. And trying to integrate the dark values of the coat color into his face a little bit, so it's not such a stark line. And there are in the photo there are areas of shadow that are as dark as the coat is next to them. He's wearing a little medallion, and I'm trying to leave that in without over detailing it. So you can see I'm painting the dark around that medallion shape, and then going in with a little bit of a wash. Well, I guess I don't at this point. Trying to get that little collar poking up into his chin area there. Okay, now I'm defining the edges of those lapels that he's got, just very simply with that dark mixture. Little buttonhole there. This point, things could go either way. It looks like it could turn out into a painting that's decent. We'll see. Okay, at this point, I've got a lot of the shadow areas in around the eyes, and I need to go in and put some detail in. Get some of those darkest darks. Start hitting some of those wrinkles that he's got around his eyes. And I maybe should have paid a little more attention to what those wrinkles were doing. I kind of just sort of rough them in a way, and it kind of gets away from me a little bit later. Typically, if I were doing a portrait like this, it would be, hours of work. I'm working very quickly here because, obviously I'm recording it for a video. And I knew I was going to use the time-lapse function in the video editor to speed it up. So I was taking a little more time with this one than the last one, but still, I'm not used to painting this way and painting with the intention of showing the work. So I do tend to rush things a little bit still. I hope to get better at that. Putting in some forehead wrinkles. Again, I'm not looking at the reference and trying to hit them just perfect and exact. Just kind of suggesting that they're there. Loosely putting in a little bit of his hair up there. He's got kind of a messy, kind of thin white hair up there. Hair dryer comes out again. Now things are looking a little goofy. I've got some strong shadows that need evened out and darker shadows in with them, and so that's what I'm doing here is I'm going back into that shadow core. And this is about where things go awry for this painting, I think. The shadows are starting to get a little overworked. I'm kind of defining the tip of the nose there a little bit with the shadow. I like where the collar is going at this point. I like those basic shapes. I like the simplicity of it. The face, not so much. It's getting kind of overworked already. I went in and I erased the pencil lines because they were starting to interfere with the values in the light areas, and I was having a little difficulty determining where I should go with those, with that pencil in there. Okay, I think this is about where I hit panic mode. I'm starting to look at this and think, I don't even know if I should keep going. And I've put so much time into it already, it's like, well, I may as well finish it. And so a lot of the choices I make from here on out are sort of kind of half-hearted and kind of panic mode kind of choices. So you'll see some dark lines and things that go in that are kind of questionable. I should have been more careful about where some of those things are going. I put in a light wash on his nose there to define the highlight line going down his nose, leaving the white paper there. So at this point I'm looking at it and thinking, well, maybe it just needs more darks. Maybe it just needs more detail around the eyes, and it does. But I think I needed to be more careful and not just start throwing little marks in like I did. You'll see some marks here where, let's see. When I start to put wrinkles in under his eyes, I start to leave marks that are a little too bold, a little too strong. But like I said, I'm in a little bit of panic mode here. I'm just I'm just trying to do anything to save this. And that's the thing, you know, when you're painting, when you, especially when you're learning to paint, you're going to have so many failures. You're going to have so many paintings that you want to throw in the garbage. And everybody does. And even as you get more accomplished, you're going to have things that don't turn out, um, that aren't your best work. Okay, I'm going in there and defining that little medallion a little more on his collar or on his coat. But like I was saying, I mean, in anything that you do that takes a lot of practice, like art does, like watercolor does, you're going to have failures. Everybody has failures. Everybody, I would imagine just about everybody on YouTube has a lot of paintings that started maybe with the intention of being a video and never made it to the screen just because it didn't go right. But yeah, don't ever get discouraged when things fail. Just learn what you can from it and really try to determine what went wrong and try not to have it happen again. All right, so at this point, I've decided that like really overworking it is what should be is what should be done at this point. Um, I did go back in and add a little bit of a cool wash on that right side of his head just to define that light hair against the background. And I know looking at this, and I know I go back into it, but that left side of his head needs to be defined as well. Looks like he has this tiny little egg-shaped head because you can't really see the hair on that left side, so it really needs something in the background to define it. And I think I do. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I go in and add that in a bit here. Still noodling away at those little details. Throw my hands up in exasperation there. The promise of of the nice clean washes at the beginning and the blocked in shapes and the simple shadows are all gone. It's only sorrow and panic at this point. Going back in and deepening that reflected light on that right side of his face, just to let that core of light in the middle, which isn't much of a core anymore, stand out. So here I am putting in that background I was talking about, just to give his head a better shape and define that he has hair over on that left side. Still picking away at it. You can save it, Brian. Go! But it was not to be. There was no saving this one. He's starting to look a little bit like Nosferatu, the vampire. But I'm just going to keep picking away at it till I just kill it completely. That'll do it. That'll fix it. All right, so here's a photo of the finished painting. It does have some merits, I guess. I like the collar and coat, the simple shapes there, the loose background. But other than that, yeah, not great. Anyway, thanks for watching this crash and burn. I hope everyone is doing well, and take care. I'll see you again soon.